What up, folks? What it do? Welcome to another episode of the Best Advice Ever Podcast. Yeah, with your boy, Mike Goodwin, the bow tie comedian. And as I start each episode the same way with the On the Road Again segment. This past week, I was on the road again and again. I was in Fort Wayne, Indiana for a fundraiser, Cross Connections Counseling Services, had their spring thing, boots and bow tie fundraiser. Really nice. Fort Wayne, Indiana. First time in Fort Wayne, and it was cold. I was not anticipating the weather because I'm now traveling primarily. So my travel consists of about 3 levels. So I have like but summertime travel. Then I have winter travel. Then I have spring, late winter. So basically what happens is, this is since I don't become chubby bubby, but my fall and winter is basically adding a coat, like a pea coat or overcoat on top. The basic fall travel has been either chinos, jeans, some type of sneakers, because I don't want to be harassed to get my shoes shine. So I wear some type of sneaker that's not like athletic. So I'm wearing grown men sneakers now. I'm not wearing trendy sneakers. I do have a couple of ones, but for the most part, I think that my shoe game, especially my sneaker game, is pretty adult. So chinos, jeans, and a hoodie. That's where the magic happens. I have on a basic button-up shirt, but I have on a hoodie because I don't like being cold. Now, I do augment it where I'll have a hoodie and a vest, like what are those, like feather down, like those down feather vests, like puffy type vest. So that's what I rode with to Fort Wayne. That's what happened when I rode with it. Fort Wayne, I had the vest because I was like, okay, I got the hoodie, and I got the vest. Should have had a coat. It was kind of, so maybe I think in the 40s. Like, I wasn't anticipating that. But Fort Wayne, the Girl Scout. It's a lot of interesting folks from Fort Wayne, Indiana. I think Dave Thomas of Wendy's fame, the woman, the creator of the Angie's List, Fort Wayne, the Girl Scout cookie corporate headquarters is out there. Very interesting place. Had a great time. They raised a bunch of money. I think they raised a good amount of money. We had a great time. And then on Friday, I was in Dallas/South Lake, Texas. Interesting enough, Texas. And I think every place has these burgeoning communities outside of the place. So, for instance, I live in Columbia, but Chapin is a place that's growing exponentially. And Blythewood, where I think a few years ago, you just would have been saying, I'm from Columbia, even if you were from Chapin or if you're from Blythewood. I don't even know if Blythewood existed 10 years ago. And that's the same is true in major cities. Now, Dallas. So you say Dallas, but you're in South Lake, which is still Dallas, but it's just these subdivisions. I don't have any beef with Columbia. I'm going to say that. I don't have any beef with Columbia, but I do you desire often to live in a real city. And no shade to Columbia. When I'm saying a real city, I'm saying like a grown-up city compared to cities that are adult cities. I feel like Columbia many times is a teenage city, maybe even a toddler city. So I'll give you a great example of when I say an adult city. Chess clubs. Chess clubs. You can throw a rock. If I'm in a major city, it's not difficult to find multiple chess clubs. Like, folks are playing chess in the park. There's a plethora. Just do it. In your spare time, pick your favorite real city. Now, here's a I know population probably has something to do with it, but these are the pieces I'm talking about. And they're very obscure, random, but it really communicates to me like, oh yeah, it's not a real city. So chess clubs. It would be very simple to find activities that aren't mainstream activities in major cities. Fencing, right? So if you lived in a major city, it wouldn't be very difficult to find information on if I want to take some classes in fencing. I want to broaden my horizon. I've looked at fencing. I've seen fencing. I'm like, oh man, that seems to be something interesting. Let me Google fencing in the city I live. Oh, I got to go to a major city. I got to go to Charlotte to find a fencing club or fencing tutorials. You probably can do some of this stuff online now, but I'm an in-person kind of guy. So fencing, chess clubs. Now, this is not what I'm talking about specifically. With chess clubs, this is another example of if I was in a major, you live in New York, you don't have a hard time finding a place to play people in chess. City I live in is one club. And if that club's not active, it ain't no club. There's no club. But what I'm talking about in particular that notifies to me, hey man, it's a big city, is how early can someone get you in an Uber? So I typically fly it's not uncommon for me to fly at 4:45 in the morning. That's not an uncommon boarding time for me. That flight may leave at 5:30. I don't even know what time flights leave. I only look at what times they board. When people are like, oh, your flight don't leave at 5:30, I'm like, yeah, but it boards at 4:45. That's the number I'm concerned about. So in Columbia, if I got up at 3:30, and I put in an Uber, it probably wouldn't be anybody to come get me. And they wouldn't probably be able to start getting people until maybe 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock. And I definitely cannot reserve an Uber. Now, this is also me speaking from maybe 6 months ago because I've been super rental car. I hadn't been Ubering as much, but I've been super rental car. In a real city, you can open your Uber app at any time of the night. Now, what was interesting that I was in South Lake and not Dallas, that it took someone about 15 minutes to get to me. Now, there were people on the app. They just were not around the corner. So they had to drive over to South Lake to take me to the airport. So that's one of the things when I identify, is this a real city? It's like, can I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and get an Uber? And there's some cities that you can't. Now, ain't no shade on that city. I'm just telling you, it's much easier to navigate in a big adult city. You know, typically what I'm thinking in general, if there's professional sports teams, that really is a great identifier. And if it's more than one, then you're like a real, like it's a city. It's really a city. And even some of the some of the brands that I want to purchase things from. Again, here in Columbia, we don't have an Apple store, which is baffling to me. So I have to go to Augusta, Georgia, which I don't think is a grown-up city, but they have a Apple store and they have a Cheesecake Factory and they have a Top Golf. I think those are things that a major city should have. And you know how many of those things that Columbia has? 0. But I'm not here to throw shade at Columbia. I was just here to share with you. I was in an adult city this weekend at Dallas, Texas. The Men's Summit at Gateway Church. Incredible. Phenomenal. Every time I go, I've been only twice. It really is inspirational. It's encouraging. The way that they do ministry at the level that they do ministry is just is jaw dropping. It's staggering. And it's encouraging. So I had a tremendous time with my buddies out in South Lake, Texas for the Men's Summit. Great word. I had a wonderful set. It was a good time. It was a funky good time. Then I got home on Saturday, and then I took myself to Myrtle Beach for an AAU tournament where I watched my son sit on the bench for 2 days. I got to talk about this AAU tournament a little later. So that's on the road. Now, for the good stuff, the segment that you've been on the edge of your seat for, you've been salivating. Hey, man, give me the best advice ever, Mike. This is a personal one. This is, and I just started saying this on stage, and it's heavy. It's heavy, so you might want to be seated. I'm going to share it from my perspective. Now, you may be able to make an adjustment to it, but this is some advice I'm giving young fathers, or fathers in general, but especially young fathers. And this is advice that I didn't get that I wish I would have gotten. It's heavy. This is like I was talking to my buddy last night. He was like, this is bars, what I'm about to say. So the best advice ever for this week. This is advice I wish someone would have told me when I was a young father. And that advice is simply, father the children that you have, not the children that you wanted. Bars. Look. And this is me. This is me navigating in my personal life. I think with my daughter, I really didn't have a lot of the child that I wanted, because I always thought about having a boy. Want me a little man, I want me a little boy, right? So raising my daughter, I didn't have any preconceived notions about what my daughter did, nor did I try to do things with my daughter that I would have wanted to do with my son for the sake of a replacement. Like, my daughter loves sports, but I think that doesn't mean that I wanted to be watching sports with my son. Like, my family is a family that enjoys sports. So that it wasn't. Now, if I put her in basketball, I would have specifically been doing some boy stuff with my girl. And in many instances that may turn out absolutely fine. But I think we've normalized, I hear people say this often, especially women. My daddy wanted a boy. He really wanted a boy. And they're fine. You know, these women are thriving, flourishing. But I don't know if that's a component that they needed in their life. Is that something that they needed to carry? Yeah, my dad was a little disappointed. Not in me, but in the fact that he didn't have a boy. I think that, I don't know. I don't know what that does. But I know for me, when I came to this realization, my son is not a younger version of me, because that's what I wanted. I wanted my young self to be a father to. The way that my dynamics was in my brain, the way that I was parenting and fathering my son, it was as if he was me as a child. And he isn't. He's him. I am him. He's him. And I had to make an adjustment. This is a recent adjustment. This is not like I've done this the last 7 years. Like, this is probably within a year, maybe 6 months, where I'm raising my son to be who he is, not to be who I am. Or even from the paradigm that he is who I was. And it's kind of, I don't, it's something that I've processed in with my therapist and talked about in counseling. But indirectly, I'm frustrated about things that I see, and I'm looking at him from the paradigm of me, and not from the paradigm of him. And so I'm adding all this extra baggage and expectations and unnecessary frustration and anxiety because I'm not allowing him to be himself. I am desiring for him to be me, a new and improved version of me. Like, you're the raw material of me 2.0. Like, you're going to be stronger, faster, sharper than I. It's like, no, man, this guy's an original. This is one of one. He's not a copy and paste. He's not a duplicate. And when I began to at least, number one, acknowledge that, it began to change how I interacted with my son. I'm talking to him here's a great example. If I'm talking to my son, I'm talking to him with this kind of hard nose, hey man, Bobby Knight type of coaching style. I like, that's the kind of coach I like, but not my son. My son, if I get stern with him, I can tell. It bothers him. It makes him, he doesn't, that's not his environment to flourish in. He didn't say, oh man, this man's raising his voice. He really is serious right now. He really is. My son, I used to folks raising their voice and carrying on, as my grandmother would say. So now that puts more of a barrier between the two of us, because I do this thing that he shuts down. His circuitry is not wired for that approach. But because I'm thinking he's a younger version of me, I'm like, man, come on, what are you doing? Man, you got to toughen up. And all these other things is like, nah, you probably need to change your approach. You need to change the way in which you're engaging with him. Because if this doesn't produce optimum results, what are we doing? I don't cuss, but this was a great opportunity to cuss. Because if the thing that you're doing doesn't work, well, I be like, why are we still trying to do it? So I offer you that advice, and you can do with it what you will. It may be your job. It may not, prepare for the job that you have, not for the job that you wanted. It may be your marriage. Now, I do understand in saying that a marriage is a scenario where you can make it the marriage you wanted. Now, you might not make it the person you wanted, but you can make the marriage be the marriage that you wanted if you nurture it and you produce that. I've already produced my son, so I can't reproduce him. Now I need to equip him and raise him and love him and nurture him, parent him, not to do those things into making him a better version of me. I need to make him reach his potential and his gifts and his abilities. So that's heavy. That's something that's a current real reality I'm processing my life through. I'm actually doing this on stage. Fathers, parent the children that you have, not the children that you wanted. Yeah, that was kind of heavy right there. That was a heavy one. But man, that would have really helped me avoid some of the pitfalls and obstacles and the head bumps and headaches that I've encountered. And I would not say that my son and my relationship isn't a good relationship. I think I'm a great dad. But I got flaws. I got issues. I have gaps, blind sides, and it is truly been a process in evolving. I thought about when you talk about parents and your childhood and their life experiences, people often say, "Man, my parents did the best they could do with what they had." I'm like, nah, my daddy, you could have did a little bit better. You could have picked up a book or something. You could have went to a seminar. I think I might have said this before, but I really feel that way. Like, yeah, I can't say that he did the best. He did some stuff. He did what he did. He did his thing. So, parent, shepherd, appreciate, whatever that word that you can replace, that adjective. The thing that you have is most important, not the thing that you wanted, the thing that you always said, "Oh, when I get a son, he gonna..." That's not who this guy is. And I'm good with that. But it took me quite a minute to get there. So since I'm heavy, let's stay heavy and talk about the mind of Mike. I've been referencing this for the last couple of weeks, so hopefully I'll have opportunity to talk about and kind of process it out a little bit, or at least communicate and share. So something happened with a few months ago, maybe back in November, October, in my personal life with a family member, and it caused me to reach back out to my therapist and say, "Hey," because I was on, I'd done therapy back in 19. One of the best decisions I've ever made. It really helped me to work out some soul issues, some childhood traumas, some things that happened in my life, and how I was seeing things really helped me to organize my mental wellness. If I've not communicated this before, I was basically raised to be angry. Like, I literally, for probably the bulk of my adult years, had heat in my chest. Like, I would get that angry where I felt like I was a nuclear reactor. Like, I was simmering. My pot was always, the eye was always on. It didn't take much. The eye was on, which was interesting because this weekend at the AAU situation, I'm leaving the men's conference. We're worshiping God. It's 4,000 men. Oh, it's such a high experience. And then I get to the AAU thing and almost get into multiple fist fights with people. And I'm really like, I don't think I would have gotten to a fist, but it was that type of energy. It was fist fight energy. So I might have to talk about that next week because this is not enough time. Let's focus on what I was started with. So I had a family member, had something happen, and I didn't realize at the time, and I reached back out to the therapist. It caused me grief. I was grieving. What's very interesting about that, I never associated grief with anything else but loss. So for instance, only time I thought you could experience grief was when you had death of a loved one. Someone died, there was a funeral, you experienced grief. Well, this scenario caused grief and the person didn't die. The person is still here. But I went through a grieving process because I grieved my perception of who I thought this person was. It made me begin to question a lot of how I looked at this person, how I treated this person. And I literally was grieving, not knowing that I was grieving. So for instance, you may break up with someone. Your heart may be getting broke. Your heart may be broken. That's grief. You may lose a job. Grief, and I think words like depression, I'm low, I'm a little down, and not like grief is a real part of that, which again, I just never thought about, man, I would grieve something that's still alive. Even to that point, I haven't broken up, and so the grief and the pain that I felt. I've been married for 23 years, and I often think about, like, I've had a couple of breakups in my life, and I've had, like, oh man, that hurt. There was grief, but so there haven't been things that has happened that I've grieved. Maybe a team will lose a game, but I'm a little hurt, a little disappointed, but grief. So one of the insights I recently received, like, you can grieve without losing a person. Like, that was earth-shattering to me. And hopefully one day I'll be able to just talk about freely what happened. But it was something that really sent me in an emotional spiral. And then that, coupled with what I'm already dealing with my dad, was just like grief on top of grief. And both of these people are still here. Like, the thing that I experienced that caused this grief, I didn't lose anyone, or I lost people. They're here, but I've lost the version or who I remembered these people to be. Now, that's not very funny. So I'm sorry. I took y'all down that very dark road, but that's the inside who the mind of Mike. Oftentimes when folks will talk about comedians, it's like, oh, I bet you Mike's so funny around the house. And I am. I all day for the good portion of yesterday, when I got home and we were watching some of the NBA games, I just kept singing, Lord, that chicken from Popeyes. I just kept singing, like, randomly. I probably did that for 3 hours. Love that chicken from Popeyes. And my daughter looking at me like, yeah, that's par for the course. This is what this guy does. Like, there's something that tickles me, and I just keep doing, Lord, that chicken from Popeyes. I just kept saying it. Speaking of tickle, I was at the airport, and they often call people up for their passport, and the lady was like, if Mike Tickle is in the boarding area, would you please come up to the I was like, this last name Tickle? Not only was his name Tickle, his wife just got married. They had T-shirts on, and she had her shirt. I didn't stop him. I saw it. It was like, he just made me Mrs. Tickle or something. I was like, yeah, I guess you got to lean into it. You got to lean into it. If your last name Tickle, you got to own it. Well, thank y'all, man. It was a little heavy. This is a little heavyweight championship podcast of the world. This month, there's going to be no on the road. I'll probably be I'll be on the road doing some AAU stuff, but I'm taking the month of May off. We're just chilling, not chilling. I'm putting together some content, taking a deep breath, gearing up for this tour and many of the things I have out on the horizon. So I may just go right into the information next week as opposed to on the road, but I will be on the road. I think we're in Greenville. I'm going to Greenville to watch my son sit on the bench. So that may happen this weekend. But if you enjoyed this episode, please let us know. You can email us at info@comedianmikegoodwin.com. Tell a friend, post it on your social media. You can also follow me at MikeGoodwin.com. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Bowtie Comedy, and on TikTok. On Facebook, I'm at Comedian Mike Goodwin. Thank y'all so much for checking in with me. It's been another great episode. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me. And I appreciate it. And I'll see you back here next Wednesday. Peace.